Hey guys, welcome to the first RPG game programming tutorial using C#. So in this video I'm going to outline how we're going to make our game, because I can't just kind of write the game and you watch me write the code, because there's quite a bit to plan out. So first I'm going to plan out what the game's going to look like and the data we're going to need just for the first part, then I'm going to show you how to do it. So first of all, what I've done here is like a quick mock-up of the battle screen. So over here we have the player's party. So these will be images of each person in the party, and then we'll have the enemy party over here. So this could be like all the enemies, and if it was a boss monster we could perhaps replace these four image spaces with one large image. And in the middle here, this is something I've been thinking about, perhaps we could have like maybe a sword or a wand, like representing the type of action that's occurred, or maybe not. It's just something to think about. But yeah, we'll think about that later when we come to implement it. Down here we have flavor text, so text describing what's happening to make the game a bit more interesting. And then we have an action button over here and an auxiliary action. So the idea is these will be combined with the stances over here to produce different effects. So say the first player was a mage, and we set the mage into assault stance, and then we said we're going to do the action. So a mage in assault stance would probably cast magic missile, let's say. So then you click that and you do magic missile. But the auxiliary action in assault stance might be something like an AoE effect or something like that. So we can kind of the player can then experiment the combinations, which makes the game a bit more interesting, because it's like we're not just selecting spells or attacks, we're kind of combining actions. Similarly, so if we were in defend and we had an action, obviously a mage would have to raise his staff, and if you had auxiliary, perhaps he could do a dodge or a parry or something like that, depending on the weapon he has. Obviously that's something you can experiment with, and as you can tell, there's a lot of room for kind of improvement and addition. So it's something interesting, which again we can see how it develops as we carry on. So if we go down here, or actually let me reset that. Okay, so I've scrolled down a bit and I've made a quick mock-up of what the world map will look like. So it's going to be divided into tiles or squares, and the player can move his party across to each square. And when the player moves in a square, all the enemies will move as well. It's kind of like in roguelike games. I think that's what it's like. If you've ever played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, that's how it works in there. So we're going to do something like that because it will be easier than having it real time, and it gives the player time to think about what they're going to do next. So it's not too difficult to there's nothing too complex even about this. You have your player character here and the monster here, and obviously if you go into them then you have a fight or whatever. And we can have chests and thing on the world map, and we can have different screens as well. So now I'm going to show you the data we're going to need just to get started. So first of all, we're going to have a world map class, and we're going to have a variable called tiles, and that's going to be of the picture box type. So we haven't encountered picture boxes before. There's going to be quite a few different data types which we haven't encountered yet, so I'll explain them as we go along. Basically a picture box is what it sounds like. It's just a box that contains a picture, and you can change the size and everything, and it's pre-made, so it's easy to use. Secondly, we have a world map sprite class, which is going to have a location of the point data type, which is an X and Y coordinate, an image of the image data type, which is a bitmap, and it's already built into C#.NET framework, and an ID, which is going to be of the integer data type, which will allow us to kind of do unique behaviors based on the world map sprite. For example, if we had an orc, we give it an ID of 1. So if we collide with something of an ID of 1, we can say, oh, it's an orc, so we're going to fight it. But if it was a chest, we could give it an ID of 2, and we'll say, okay, if it's ID of 2, then we're going to do something different. Obviously we're not going to fight a chest. So it allows us to kind of have a lot more flexibility with the world map sprites that we're going to encounter in our game. Next we have a world map monster. So the world map monster is going to inherit from the world map sprite class. You remember in a previous video I talked about inheritance and how and class object-oriented programming and how it makes things a bit easier, because the world map monster is going to have all the data a world map sprite has, except that it's going to have loot as well. That's the only difference. So instead of just copying out all this data up here, we'll just have the one and inherit from the world map sprite class. Finally, we have the player party class, which instead of inheriting from the world map sprite, it's actually going to contain a world map sprite object. And it's going to contain other data as well, except I didn't want to complicate things by adding it here. So instead we're just going to focus on this for now. Right, so now we know the data we need, we can go in and start writing the code. So if you start up Visual Studio, go to New Project, and then Visual C#, and do a Windows Form application. And give it a name, I'll just call it RPG Game. And then click OK. Let it load. So what we're using here is Windows, what's called Windows Forms, and it allows us to edit like a Windows window basically, and it allows us to add a bunch of controls. On this video I've cut them off, but on your one you should see a bunch of controls to the side here, like button, pointer, checkbox, things like that. Now this is useful because it allows us to create a window, and then we can then draw to it and create buttons and things. It's going to make it easier when we're designing our game. Now I'm going to go over to the Solution Explorer, so give me a moment. So this is the Solution Explorer, and what it allows us to do is view the files which are going to be used in our game or in our project, and it allows us to add new ones. So all of our code is inside what's known as .cs files, and we have a bunch of other files which you don't need to worry about at the moment. So what you need to do here is right click on your game and hover over Add and then New Item, and this window will pop up. Let me just make this smaller. Right, and you should see code, and then you want to click class, and then call this class game, and then click add. 1 second. Right, now that we have a class, this is a class which is going to contain our game, right? So what we're going to do is create an object of the game class inside of the place where the program enters, and then we're going to have all of our code inside of this class here. So what I'm going to do now is just type up all the other classes we need, and I'll walk you through them instead of typing them out and recording it, because it will save time, and really there's no need to do that at this level. Okay, first of all, what I've done is I've imported the system.drawing namespace and the system.windows.form namespaces. This is required because it gives us access to certain data types which we need to make our game. It's going down. What I've done here is I've created a variable called form and called it gameForm, and I've created a constructor for our game class in which we assign the form. So this might be a bit advanced at the moment, don't worry too much, you'll see why it's important later. Just remember to include it now. Next we have our world map class, and we have a list of picture boxes which are going to be our tiles, and then we have a constructor which requires the form from earlier. Next we have our world map sprite, and it contains a location of the point data type, which is just an x and y integer, and an image, which is just an image, and an ID. And in this constructor we are assigning the values, and we're passing in values that we need initially, and then we just assign them. Next we have our world map monster. We inherit from the world map sprite, and we have a loot data type. However, we need to actually create the loot data type, So I haven't included it yet. I've just used a comment to indicate that we need to add it later. And finally, we have the player party class, which contains a world sprite, which is going to represent the player's party on the world map. Now, in the next video, we're going to start. Displaying a world map. We're going to learn how to kind of display stuff on the screen. Then we're going to create a data file in which we read in a world map. So yeah, thanks for watching and look out for the next video.